Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369 here today, and I'm going to be replacing a light fixture in my house. Now the fixture that's in there, it's kind of an older style, doesn't quite go with the modern house that I have, and uses just one bulb. The one I'm putting in is a Project Source light fixture. This box contains two of them. I'll have a link for it below in the description so you can purchase it if you like this style. And it uses two bulbs, and you get two fixtures for about $25. And they're a little bit cheaply made, but I like them. They're kind of a satin nickel finish with a sleek modern look. They don't have any weird fancy glass on them, just this frosted glass. And I pair that with some of these General Electric classic LED bulbs. There's some cheaper bulbs out there, but I like these. They last a little bit longer than the cheaper version that GE puts out. And I get the 60 watt equivalent daylight, and that makes it fairly bright in here and gives you a really good color, I think. I don't like the soft light. The room I'm filming in right now already has one of these light fixtures installed with two of these bulbs. And for the two bulbs, you're going to use about 16 watts versus if you have some of the older bulbs, they'll probably use, like, well, if you have a standard bulb in there, it might be 65 watts. The box has everything you need in it except for the tools. And for this, you're probably going to need a Phillips screwdriver. Might need a set of needle nose depending on what kind of wiring you have to do. A pair of wire strippers. It's our existing fixture, so the wire should be stripped to the appropriate length, but depending on who installed the last light fixture, they might have done it wrong, even if they were an electrician. And then probably some electrical tape. You might need a standard flat screwdriver, but I think all the fixtures I've done previously, I didn't end up using it. So this is the fixture that I'm going to be pulling out. It still has that satin nickel finish, but as you can see, the glass on it has kind of a design. It's clear glass, and it just doesn't fit the design of my house. And you can kind of tell with all the shadow up here on the ceiling, because the light is only on one side of the fixture and there's the receptacle that the bulb screws into blocking some of the light, it creates a huge shadow in this room. So it's kind of hard to film this fixture directly to show you what it looks like because the bulbs are so bright, but you can kind of see that there's not really any shadow on the ceiling for this entire room. And if I try to pull the camera up and give you a good view of the fixture, the settings of the camera change and darken in the whole area. That's how bright this is. But that's what it's going to look like after it's installed in the other room. And I'll try to get some good photos of it before I finish. So before you get started, you want to turn on the light, then go down to your circuit breaker panel and flip off the breaker that turns off this light. And you want to do that instead of just turning off the light switch, because if the person, instead of running the hot wire through the light switch, they ran the neutral wire, the switch on the wall would still turn off the light, but you'd end up with a hot wire that you could accidentally ground out while you're working on the fixture. So you want to turn off the breaker instead of the light switch. Because this room's so dark, I have a light on the floor plugged into an extension cord going outside the room to a different circuit. So to take off the old fixture, you loosen this nut while holding the glass so it doesn't fall and shatter. And then once that nut's out of the way, the glass just comes off. This is one of those old compact fluorescents, which they contain mercury. Other than that, I mean, they're not too bad. They use a little bit more energy than the LEDs. This one's an 18 watt, so we're actually going to end up using 2 watts less with 2 bulbs instead of just one bulb. And then usually there's 2 screws holding on the actual base and you'll need to loosen those and then twist the base. Either pull these all the way out or just loosen them and then twist the base until the screw head lines up with the hole in the base, and it'll just slide off the ceiling. And then once that's down, you'll take the electrical tape off the connections and unscrew the wire nuts. And the last part you have is this bracket that screws into the ceiling mount or the electrical box. And if you're putting in a new light fixture, you'll have to put in this box, cut the hole, and run the wires into the box. But since this is just an existing fixture, you pull these two screws out that connects the light fixture bracket to the box, and then replace it with the new one that comes with the kit. And the new one is similar dimensions to this, so you might be able to get away with using the old bracket, but I always kind of worry about the actual holes that line up with the fixture base might be in a slightly different location, and I just like replacing it with the new hardware just to be safe. With this kit you have two different lengths of screw, and the head design on them is the same, and the short screw is for attaching the bracket to the electrical box, and then the long screw is what's going to attach the light fixture base to the bracket. When attaching this bracket, you don't want to over tighten it and cause the bracket to bend, but you want it tight enough to where it's not really shifting around. So just kind of snug up against the drywall. And then you have three wires coming down. You'll have a black wire, that's your hot wire. You'll have a white wire, which is your neutral. And then you should have a bare wire, which is your ground. And you want the ground to attach to this bracket, and that way if a wire gets cut or something and touches the bracket, it'll ground out and be safe, versus creating a piece of metal now that's real large, easy to touch when you're messing with the light, and going to cause the whole fixture to become hot to where you could actually accidentally electrocute yourself just by touching the housing of the light fixture. And you want to wrap that clockwise around this ground screw here on the strap, and that's the direction that the ground screw tightens. And then you just tighten down that ground screw and hold that wire in place. And this one's kind of helpful that it was already bent. If you didn't have that, you could create the loop with a set of needle nose pliers. The next step is you want to connect the light fixture, and it has a bare ground wire, a white neutral wire, and a black hot wire. So basically you just match up the wires and connect them to each other with wire nuts. And with these wire nuts, what you do is you lay the two strands of wire side by side. If there's not at least about 3/4 of an inch of bare wire on this, you'll need to strip some insulation off with your wire strippers. You just lay them parallel to each other, stick the wire nut on, and then turn the wire nut down until the wire twists around a couple times. And there's no need to twist the wires with a set of pliers because the wire nut will put a couple twists in it when you have it properly tightened down. And this fixture's light enough that you can just let the wires support the weight while you're doing the install. If it was something heavier, you might want to like put a screw or something into a stud and then support the fixture using a coat hanger or something while you wire it up before you're able to attach it to the bracket. Once that's done, I make sure to secure the wire nuts to the wires using some electrical tape. And when I wrap it, I start on the wire nut and I go in the tightening direction for the wire nut. And then I go down until I have at least 1 or 2 wraps that are just around the wire. And then usually you can just tear the electrical tape. I'm cutting it here. For some reason, this particular tape's pretty tough to tear. And this does 2 things. It helps make sure that wire nut's not going to come loose for any reason. And then also if the wires were stripped a little bit too long, there's too much insulation missing off the end, it's going to cover that up and make sure that 2 wires don't touch each other and start some sort of electrical fire. Now you take the long screws and put them in the bracket, and there's 2 sets of holes here. There's 2 outside furthest apart, and then there's 2 inner. On the box that I'm using, the 2 outside holes are touching the drywall, so the screw wouldn't be able to tighten down through the bracket. So I'm going to use the 2 inner holes, and the light base, or the fixture base, has holes to accommodate both those. And you have to do one set or the other. You can't mix and match on this because then it won't line up with the base correctly. And you just tighten those in about half a turn just so they won't come out. And you push your wires back up into your electrical box. Line up your holes. And then rotate the base to lock it down. Now that it's in position, use your screwdriver and tighten your screws down the rest of the way. And this is another instance where you just want these tightened down so the base is snug to the ceiling. You don't want it overly tight and bending the base in and causing it to deform. Next, you're going to install this threaded rod with a nut on it, and you want the portion with the nut closest to the end to go into the base. And you just screw that in at least 3 threads worth, and then you use the nut to lock it down. And for this you can use the pliers or a wrench to kind of tighten it down, but usually just hand tight's fine. If you screw this piece in too much, when you put the globe on there, enough of it's not going to be sticking out the bottom to engage the nut and the little cap that goes on the end of it to cover the nut. At this point, you're going to install your bulbs, and then turn your light switch off, go to your breaker box and flip the breaker on. Come back up and use the light switch to test this. Make sure that you don't hear any arcing going on, smell anything burning, and that both your bulbs are good. So it's working. Now we install the glass globe, and it has this little rubber grommet piece that goes in there to keep you from having metal to glass contact. And then this tiny little nut secures everything. You can also have this rod sticking too far out of the glass. This looks like it might be correct, so we'll go ahead and try. If it's the wrong length, you have to pull the globe back off and then either tighten the rod in further or loosen it to give you more exposed threads once the glass is on there. And just tighten that down finger tight so the glass isn't moving around. And the last step is to install this decorative cover piece. And that's where you want enough rod sticking down to allow this to screw on and tighten down to where it's contacting the glass. And for that you need at least half an inch of rod sticking out here, but you don't want like more than 3/4 of an inch exposed. Otherwise, when you tighten the cap down, it won't contact the glass. And in this case, I have too much rod sticking out. There's at least a 1/8 inch gap between the cap and the glass. So I have to pull this off real quick and adjust the length in about that much. The quick way to do this is I loosen the nut down about how large the gap was, go about 1 turn extra, and then tighten the rod down until the nut touches the base. Then lock the whole assembly with the nut by tightening it. And reinstall everything. This is closer to 3/8 of an inch protruding from the glass. So I'm thinking if you, as long as you keep it between 1/4 and about 1/2, just shy of 1/2, you'll be okay. If you have it too short, the threads in this decorative piece won't engage the threaded rod and you won't be able to screw it on. And that's it. It's complete. So as you can see, this is the area that used to have all the shadows. It's much better lit in this direction. If I shine too much at the light, the camera image will darken and then it will look like there's shadows there when there aren't any. And this room is much better lit at this point. Okay, YouTube, that's it. I mean, the whole process probably took maybe 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes. If you like that light fixture and how it looks, the link for it is below in the description of the video. Also, I have a link for those particular LED bulbs that I'm using. They're the daylight 60-watt equivalent LEDs. The General Electric Classics, and I love those bulbs. They're just about anywhere in my house that uses a standard bulb. And then I've gone through almost every bedroom that I have that doesn't have a ceiling fan. I've put in these light fixtures. I've also put them in the bathrooms that use drop down, and they look better, more modern and more conservative than the previous light fixture that was in there. That previous one used these clear kind of textured glass bowls, and to me they just were too old of a design. I mean, it seems like it would be something you found in an older house, not a modern house, or in a house of somebody that's older might like this style light fixture. They just weren't very good looking, and then because they only had the one socket for the bulb, you're kind of limited on how bright stuff was. and they're great fixtures. It's real glass. This piece is plastic, but you're not going to notice it unless you're tall enough to reach up and touch it. And then the actual electronics in it are great. I mean, they're like ceramic cup receptacles for the bulb, very well wired. The insulation on the wires are high heat type insulation, so they actually handle like two 60-watt bulbs in there instead of the 18-watt LED or the 8-watt LEDs. If you like the video, please hit the thumbs up and feel free to subscribe to my channel. Hope you like the video. See you later.